And we're back, and this is part 2. It is based on another mamar from Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman, but the truth is, it is the Torah, it is Hashem himself. At the end of the Torah, on the day that Moshe Rabbeinu dies, a number of sedras are written in the Torah. And let's focus on Nitzavim Vayelech and Ha'azinu, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with Moshe Rabbeinu, turns his attention to the end of days. And he predicts, Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, there will come a time when I, V'choro Api, I will be very annoyed with my people. They will have abandoned me as a people, and I will be very annoyed with them. And terrible things will happen to Klal Yisrael. And therefore, people will be, like we all are, to some extent, frightened, bewildered. What do I do? What is happening? This is not business as usual. We all have a sense that this is not just another Israel's having a hard time with a few militants on its border. We see the things that are happening around the world. Open, naked anti-Semitism that we thought liberal, progressive, democratic institutions will all recognize. In a week when the New York Times changes its headline 3 times after the strike on the hospital, within minutes, the New York Times puts out a headline saying, Israeli strike kills 500 in Palestinian hospital. An hour or two later, when it became not so certain that it was an Israeli strike, they changed it a bit. And then they changed it a 3rd time, and now we know it's nowhere near 500. So nothing about it was true. Nothing. And this is the New York Times. Let's not even talk about the BBC. I'm feeling quite ashamed to be British at the moment, to be honest. When we have demonstrations outside the Sydney Opera House saying, gas the Jews. This is not something we can hide from anymore. And yes, of course, we are grateful to all the governments around the world that are pledging support and standing up at the moment. But let us not kid ourselves. There is significant, open, naked anti-Semitism around the world at the moment. Let's be clear. This is a reality. And we say to ourselves, it's like we're living in some nightmare. This is 2023. We're meant to have, I'm not going to say the United Nations, because there's a joke. There's a cruel, wicked joke if there ever was one. And unfortunately, it's not funny. And this is actually important, as we will discover shortly. So, HaKadosh Baruch Hu predicts. The Ramban actually writes, he says, and I quote, Ve'ilu hoisa hashira hazois michtav echad min achoizim bekoichovim. If the Shira of Ha'azinu, which is what we're going to look at very shortly, if this was a Nostradamus, if this was somebody who looks into the stars and predicted it, shehigid meireshis achris, kein hoya ro'oi lahamin ba. One would need to believe it. Mepnei sheniskayim kol dvareho adheino loy nofal dova. Because everything in the Shira of Ha'azinu, which is what we're about to explore, which is our rule book, it's our guide through this terrible mess, says the Ramban. If a non-Jewish philosopher, poet would have predicted all these things, then we would go out to rush out and buy copies, because it would be amazing. Every single thing in it is true. And that's the Ramban writing in the 13th century. And we are now living through this bit of the end of days. And we absolutely have a duty to look at the Torah's description and prescription of what we do at the end of days. And Moshe Rabbeinu is told by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there will come a time when I will be very angry with the people. V'chora api, I will abandon them, I will turn my face away from them. And therefore go and write down the Shira of Ha'azinu. 45 Pesukim. Sorry, 43. It's 43 Pesukim, which is a scan, a sweep of all of history. And we're going to learn it with a few select Rashis, and it hopefully will all become crystal clear. When this happens, says Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu, go and write down this Shira, teach it to them. Klal Yisrael, we need to know this. Simo befihem, leman tiyo hashira hazois le'ed bivnei Yisrael. This, says Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu, is what we, now, here, in 2023, as these terrible things are unfolding, this is our guide. It's here. For I will bring them to a land, and I will give them everything, and they will turn away from me. And va'onsa hashira hazois lefonov le'ed. And this shira will be our promise that things will get dark and are dark and may get darker, but it will end well. But there's one twist. Now let's have a look at Ha'azinu. At the Shira of Ha'azinu, these 43 Pesukim. According to Rashi, they are in 2 stages. And I'm going to select a few Pesukim, which I'm going to read and translate and give you 1 or 2 short Rashis, and it speaks for itself. This is the Ribbono Shel Olam speaking to us directly. And therefore, this is what we need to do. Ha'azinu starts off very positively, and it tells us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is amazing, and we need to look back in history and remember things that happen. And Hashem found us in a wilderness, and like an eagle who looks after his young, he took us, he lifted us out of Mitzrayim and took us to Eretz Yisrael. And then the following happens. We're up to Pasuk Tesvav, the Pasuk 15. Vayishman Yeshurun Vayivot. We became fat. We kicked out at Hashem, and we denied him, and we started replacing him with other value systems, with other ways of life. And we started serving forms of Avodah Zarah. And here, one needs to stop and insert Rabbi Chanan Wasserman's comments. Avodah Zarah, we must reframe our idea of what Avodah Zarah is. Avodah Zarah does not mean some primitive idiot bowing down to a stick or to the sun. It means that if a Yid believes and relies in anything other than the Ribbono Shel Olam to have the power to save them and to run the world, independent of Hashem, that is Avodah Zarah. Let that sentence sink in, because that is really important. One can be religious, one can even be Shomer Shabbos, but if somebody thinks that they can rely on anything other, anything independent of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is Avodah Zarah. It can be capitalism. It can be any system, any value system, where you do not feel that you need the Ribbono Shel Olam. Let me explore this and deepen this a little bit more with an idea, a beautiful idea from Rabbi Elia Lopian Zatzal on a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara tells us as follows: Shnayim olu lamita. 2 people become sick. They have similar constitution. They have the same illness, the same degree of illness. And the Gemara says one of them passes away, one of them doesn't survive, and the other one survives. Why? Says the Gemara, because one davened and one didn't daven. We're talking about 2 people who are in bed, sick, knowing they're very severely ill, really ill, and one of them davens and the other one doesn't daven. The Gemara asks, surely, the Gemara assumes we're talking about religious Jews. Says the Gemara, somebody who's sick, why would he not daven for himself? Of course he will daven. The Gemara says because he didn't daven properly. Says Rashi, he didn't niskaven, he didn't have kavana. He didn't focus his thoughts. What on earth does this mean? How can this make any sense? Asks Rabbi Elia. It's one thing when you're davening for somebody else, but when you are davening for yourself, you surely, of course, you'll focus. Of course, you'll mean it. And Rabbi Elia answered as follows, and I'll say it over the way I heard it from my Rebbe, Matisyahu Salman Shlita. He said as follows: we as Jews know that, for example, if somebody is sick, we have a range and a variety of methods that we can and perhaps even should use in order to address the situation. We give tzedakah. We're Jews, so we go and get a second and a third opinion. My cousin knows somebody who knows a makubal in somewhere, and I go and give him some money. And I'll say some tehillim. And maybe I'll do this, and maybe I'll do that. And I hope that one of those will hit the mark. I don't know, I'm not sure which one, but I hope one of them will work. When we daven, says Rebellia, davening means Rafa'enu Hashem v'nei Rofei, Baruch atah Hashem roifei cholei amo Yisrael. It means there is only one address. There is only, you are standing, when a person davens Shemoneh Esrei, you are oimed lifnei hamelech. You're in the presence of the boss. And the boss can do whatever he wants. If we genuinely felt that, the tefillah would be different. It is, I am only relying on you. I'm relying on you, Rabbeinu Shalom. I'm talking to you directly. Matisio even used to say, it's a sharp observation, he would say that sometimes when people are davening and they're crying, they're saying their tehillim, they might even be envisaging the levaya already, which is a bit of a sharp thing to say. But the point is that to have full kavanah means that I utterly, totally realize that my salvation lies in one thing and one thing only, you, Rabbeinu Shalom. And I'm now speaking to you directly. Of course, both cholim davened, but one of them didn't fully appreciate and realize the significance and the power of what it means to be in the presence of Hashem and to be able to address him directly and to realize there is nothing else in the world can help you. And this is what is happening in Ha'azinu. Klal Yisrael reach a point in time when in the deepest recesses of their hearts, they do not have full bitachon, meaning they rely on other things. They believe in Hashem, you can believe in Hashem. You can know that he is powerful. You might even know that he's all-powerful. But real bitachon is knowing that everything is only in his hands. And when as a tzibur, remember, we're talking as a collective, we're not talking about individuals. When we as a nation forget him, and turn to other things, whatever they may be. And this is what it says here in the Psukim. I encourage you to take out a Chumash, look at it in translation, whatever language. And it says very clearly, when we rely on other things, my arrows I will shoot into Klal Yisrael, says Hashem. And I'm going to read just one thing because it's so potent. First of all, everybody's talking about Hamas being in this week's parasha. The other Hamas is here in Ha'azinu. V'shen behemoth ashalech bom, says Hashem, I will send the teeth of behemoth im Hamas zoichale offer, with creatures who crawl on the earth. The venom of creatures who crawl on the earth. Hamas zoichale offer. And then the next pasuk, michutz teshakel cherev, outside the sword will reign, umechadorim eima, and inside rooms there will be fear. Gam bochor, gam basula, the young, yoinek im ish seva, children and old people. It's all here, my friends, it's all here. Omarti Afayim, says Hashem, you should know, really, maybe Klal Yisrael don't deserve to be saved. The reason I don't take it further, says Hashem, is because so that the enemies shouldn't say, Pen Yomru Tzoreimoi, Pasuk Chav Zayin, so that the enemies shouldn't say, Yodeinu Rama, it's us. You see, Hashem has abandoned them, and that would be a Chilul Hashem. Lu Chochmu Yaskilu Zois, says Hashem, if the enemies had any seichel, they would realize how bizarre this situation. We all woke up with a shock, as if it was a surreal. How can this be? With all the sophisticated technology at a border, with infrared sensors, with... How is it possible? How can one, a small people, of such a few number of people, can terrorize kilometers in southern Israel? If Hamas would only have had a drop of seichel, they would have realized, says the Pasuk, Im loiki tzuram mechoram, if it isn't that the rock of Israel, Hashem, has sold them out, and he allowed it to happen. Again, Hamas, a few psukim later, Hamas taninim yenom. And then, in Posuk Lamed Hey, there is a dramatic shift of tone. Says Rashi, Ad kan heyed aleim Moshe divrei techocha. Up until this point, Moshe Rabbeinu was rebuking Klal Yisrael, warning them this is going to happen. And now the tide turns. And this is the upbeat, uplifting part that I promised you. Says Rashi, Lihi yois hashiro hazois. Remember, it's a shira. A shira is something that is sung. It is poetry. It is uplifting. It is expansive. It is visionary. And this is le'ed keshetovoy aleim apuronus. Says Rashi, when these things, these terrible things will happen to us, yedu, you should know, sha'ani hoidatim meirosh. It's all there. It's all been written beforehand. Mikan va'elech, from that moment on, when you realize that, hevi aleim divrei tanchumin, the comforting and the reversal of all of this begins to start. Sheyovay aleim kechlois hapuronus, when the punishment finishes. But when will that be? And this is the piece de resistance. When we say, Ei Eloheimu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will turn to us and say, Nu, where are all these gods that you've relied on, whoever they may be? Any system of values that you relied on that's going to come to your aid and prevent you from being attacked physically, emotionally, anywhere in the world, all of these incredible bastions of civil, liberal, progressive, Western democracies with human rights and equality, and where are they? You're being butchered in your beds. Did they help you? Are they on your side, or are they so quick to condemn and to print because they hate you? Where does this come from? Yokumu v'yazruchem. No, they should get up and help you, says Hashem. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and here is the bit. Says Rashi, Ki yireh ki ozlas yod ve'efes otzur ve'ozuv. When we, and I say we as a nation, when we reach this point, I'm going to read and translate Rashi. K'sheyireh ki yad ha'oyev hoileches v'choizekes ma'oid aleim. When we see the enemy becoming stronger and stronger and stronger, ve'efes bohem otzur ve'ozuv, and we feel hopeless and abandoned, and we then, as a nation, turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And here is where all the positive, amazing things that we've seen this last week. When we see videos of El Al pilot saying a Kapitel Tehillim after takeoff, when we see people not associated generally with religiosity being so open to tzitzis, to Shabbos, to Tehillim, to Tefillah, it's the realization it's only the Rabbeinu Shalom. That is the teshuvah of the nation, and that is what we continue with love and with pain in our heart. That is what we continue to push at every opportunity. When we see the opposite, it's only a few short weeks ago of that horrible brawl in Tel Aviv on Yom Kippurim about davening, without going into the rights and wrongs of that. And in a few short weeks, we're back to Chayalim and Charedim and all Yidden hugging each other and realizing we are Am Echad and we only have Avinu Shebashomayim. Nothing else. Nothing else will help us. Nothing else can help us. And that is what Hashem is showing us. And V'dova ze midarkei ha-teshuvah, and that is for us, our national teshuvah. And when we continue to be mischazek in this, then we have set the stage for the end of days. And then comes the end. It says Hashem, li nokom v'shilem. I have a day waiting and ready to kill and to destroy and take revenge against all those Rishoyim who dared touch my beloved precious children. But first, his children have to remember who is their Father in heaven. So this is the end playing itself out. And we're going, Baruch Hashem, we are going in the right direction. It's what is happening on the outside is absolutely terrible. But Klal Yisrael is responding in the way that only we know how. Leiv echad, am echad. Looking for the achdus with each other. More shmiras hamitzvos, more shmiras lashon hara. In Tehillim, in Tefillah, in Tzedakah, in Chesed, and Limud HaTorah. And then we know that Mashiach is just around the corner. Have an amazing, peaceful Shabbos.